Pastor Lana, we are back again. Recall last week when we started, we were dealing with this idea that we said that there's a country's Minister of Finance deals with the country's finances. The finance minister in our country is the one who looks at the overall strength or health of our finances. And when we spoke about finances, we said finances, in a sense, there's two ways. You could either be dealing with whether you are acquiring or you are selling stuff, meaning you are providing credit to people or you are selling. Or as a noun, we said this particular idea is about money management. It's about credit. It's about banking. It's about investments. And we said last week, please do not think that the Bible is silent about these things. The one who's the master overall thinker, the one who indeed brought everything into being, speaks about these. Because money affects us, our finances affect us. We have known when we don't have money, we don't sleep. Right? We don't sleep. Or when we have made bad financial decisions, we don't sleep. Or when we are facing major financial burdens, we know we come before the Lord. And all that we are trying to do in these few lessons is to bring our thought, to bring this thought to our minds that God seeks for us to know about this. And therefore, I'm still aiming to encourage you again to say that as God's stewards, we ought to learn how to utilize God's financial resources. That's why I've entitled my message, Financial Wisdom for New Testament Believers. Going back to last week, what we spoke of, we brought this first to say that when God speaks, he speaks to people for all of us to know that we own nothing. That's the first thing that we are to have. We own nothing. And because he owns all things, he means that whatever that we have with regard to talents, giftings, money, whatever resources, we ought to know that they all belong to God. All that we are just managers. And we said that particular thought of managing or being a custodian of God's resources, we said you are a steward. They don't belong to you. You only have them temporarily. And he said, the second thought that we are to have as stewards is we must have the thought clear that God is going to hold us accountable. God is not only going to hold us accountable, he is one who gives us these resources. And we said we ought to live always with this thought that we will stand before God and give an account. And we said as stewards, as wise steward, God also requires of us to be those who plan. We will not do things haphazardly. We will be those who are planning. And as those who are planning, what is also needed is we need to also to be those who are disciplined. We need to take our plans and put them into actions. And after we are disciplined, we said, if we know that we are stewards who must plan, who must give an account, who need to be disciplined in this, how can we acquire financial might or these resources? We said God gave us work. We need to work. Work is what God has given to people so that they can acquire the finances. And he said this type of work, it is what we call gainful employment, where we use our giftings and our talents to acquire the finances that God has in place for us. And he said, as we work, one of the things that God said we ought not to do, we ought not to be gambling, to be gamblers. Because all that gambling is, it's about laziness. It is about immaturity. Because we seek the quickest route to make money. And he said the worst thing that happened to our country is the lotto. Because the lotto actually drains from the people. And he said one thing that you need to know, I didn't say it last week, let me just mention it. Should you go to Sandton and you go to those affluent areas, the queues for the lotto are very rare. Because in a sense, the lotto is made for poor people. Because we want the shortest and the quickest route to wealth without working. Tata my chance, as others said. If you don't play, you can't get. But all that you have to know is this: God will hold us accountable even for those resources. If you take the money and go play the lotto, you will. We said it's not yours. Oh, and let me say this. After you have won the lotto, please don't bring it to church. We have to be people who are principled. After you have won your millions, please don't give it to church. And we said the reason why it is because the reason why we don't want to work, we said the reason it's because of what sin did to us. After God created Adam, the first thing he told him was here to work. But after sin came, that's why the thinking about work became distorted. That's why when we're thinking of quick ways of making money. And he said when we don't understand what work is, we are forgetful that work is dignity. Work is spiritual. Work is what gives God great glory when we work. Work is how that we fulfill our potential through work. We say when we are working, it is a beauty. There is a beauty about it. At the end of the day, when you have worked hard, there's a satisfaction that comes from that. That's why we must work. And therefore this week as we continue, we need to look now into how then the Bible addresses this issue of finances, how it pertains to savings, how it pertains to investments, what about spending, what about purchases, what about credit, and understanding what a credit profile is. You need to know what a credit profile is. Anyway, I'm not a clever man. I'm taking guidelines from two people. There's a man who's passed on called Hampton Keithley III and also Wayne Mack. They deal with these two issues. We need to understand first, Basel 1, after we have work, what the Bible grants as a guideline is we are people who must save. We need to be savers, who save our money. Because what saving is, it is about forward planning. It is about anticipating the future. Because what we know that the future is inevitable. Whether we want to or not, tomorrow is going to come. And when tomorrow comes, therefore, we need to be those who are not only wise stewards, but we are planning on ahead because we don't know what circumstances are going to be like, and therefore we need to start planning and saving for the rainy day. It's not a new idea. When God was about to bring that there be no food in the Near Eastern world, he gave a directive to Joseph to save. Joseph had to save for 7 years. Well, you can take from him, he only saved 20%. So planning, the idea of saving, is also how God then still speaks to us, that we need to know how to save. And if we are going to be savers, we need to be disciplined in our thinking. We need to be disciplined in our attitude, in our actions. Because we know none of us controls the future at all. Because there's only one who controls time. You can look it up in Isaiah 46:10. God speaks about this idea that only He alone is eternal. Only He alone controls time. You and I don't. And the only thing that we can do about the future, we can only control our actions regarding those. Look with me at Proverbs 21 verse 20. Because it gives us a profile of the type of people that are there. You are either one of the two. It says there is a precious treasure and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man swallows it all up. Look at this. There is a profile of two types of people. Either you are saving or you are a spendthrift. Everything that you require, you spend it all on yourself without thinking for the future. Why there should be treasure and oil? It is because you have saved. Let's go to the right. Look at how this, in Proverbs 30 verses 24. The writer of Proverbs looks and goes into nature, into creation, and he says this, 4 things are small on the earth, but they are exceedingly wise. He says the ants are not strong people. Ants are not mighty. We step on them. But they prepare their food in the summer. What they are saying is the ants, though that they not be great in terms of might, they are wise because they look forward to the future and they do what? And they save. Meaning they are future proofing. And that's what savings do. We are future proofing. Let's go to the 6th chapter, verses 6 and 8. Verses 6 and 8. And it speaks to people this idea of the lot or indolence, laziness. It says, go to the end, O sluggard, observe her ways and be wise. Children, it says, go and learn from the ant, because the ant, though small, it is very wise. It says, though it has no chief officer, it has none who's ruling over it, but it prepares its food in the summer and gathers a provision in the harvest. But look at verse 9. How long will you lie down, O sluggard? When will you rise up from your sleep? The reason why we are unable to acquire finance, it is because we're lazy. The majority of us. Though we have the ability to work, we choose not to work. Because what we have learned the cow-depend mentality. And for those who are with us down there, this is what Paul addresses also in the book of Thessalonians, that the church must not bring this thinking into that, because then that's how then people get to lose their ability to work, because then we are encouraging people through welfare. We're not saying when people are not doing well, we do not take care of them. But we must not encourage laziness and that people don't work. That's what the end does. Work during the time when it is time to work. That's what the children need to learn even in our homes, that we need to learn to be savers. We said because we don't know tomorrow. So what the end does, they know about the predictability of the future. And what do? They save. What about saving again? Because when we as a church learn to become savers, we become and demonstrate that we are those who are responsible familiarly. Because when we are savers, we point out that we are affirming a practice that through our finances we become wise stewards. What we are supposed to be, even in families, we need to meet in the financial needs throughout whatever life's periods would be, or episodes. Let's look at 1 Timothy. That's where this idea comes from. 1 Timothy 5, verse 8. Our money shows where our affections lie. We spoke about this last week. Whatever you love, you'll spend your money on. Those who love cars spend their money on cars. They say, oh, they are car lovers, they are car aficionados. 20 cars in the garage. I love those. I love watching those programs where a man then sits and he has 100 cars and he makes an air-conditioned warehouse such that they don't get to be destroyed. And guess what? Even those 100 to 200 cars, after you die, they're still there. They're not going to go anywhere because you can't take them with you. I remember one of the things that I saw, it was a picture about a man in Kenya who was a very rich man. There's a particular vehicle that he loved. And when he was buried, they made a grave for him. A grave big enough to fit that car in. Did. And with his suit and everything sitting on the driver's seat. And they took it down the grave and they closed it up. But he tells you where his heart was. This is what Christ is speaking of. He says, look into your heart. But know and understand that the future, that eternity is real, and you and I will stand in eternity. But these are the savings. But what we are saying is, when we are thinking of savings, we are to think also in terms of long-term savings, because long-term savings fall into a different class altogether. They are in a different category. Because even long-term savings, you will have what is called liquid or illiquid. Liquid meaning cash. Or illiquid is house. If you have a house, it's illiquid because you can't turn it into money tomorrow. You must first sell it. And the Bible also speaks about the type of attitude that we are to have about long-term savings. And the first one again is still Psalm 24, or even Psalm 103 verse 9. Let's look at Psalm 103 verse 19. It's the same idea. Psalm 103 verse 19. Or even Romans 11:36. For to him and through him are all things, to him be the glory. What he says is, in a sense, you and I need to understand is, everything on earth has got a title deed. And on the title deed is either your name or mine on it. But whatever the name that is on the title deed, your name will expire on the title deed. Meaning, everything everything that we think that we own eventually will expire through loss. Whatever loss, it could be because it has been stolen, or it is because we have made bad or unsound financial decision, or we are going to lose it because we have died. So whatever we make purchases, we need to know that our lives or our names on those things will eventually expire. It's not forever. So therefore, whatever that you are holding, have a proper view of what ownership is. We are nothing else but asset managers, not owners. That's the first thing. If you are thinking long term, look at me in 1 Timothy 6:17. This is Paul writing to Timothy, to the church in Ephesus. Look what he says. Did I say 17 or 7? I'm looking for this one. I want what time, because I wonder. Unless if I missed it. Hey, now I'm going to be panicking. Oh, 6, Ben. I'm sorry. I'm in 5. Look at verse 17. He says, instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things for us to enjoy. The thought is, whatever wealth that you have accumulated, it is not ironclad surety. Do not think that money is security. What Paul is saying, he's saying that, and he gives a warning to those who are rich to say, please do not seek security outside of Jesus Christ. Why? Because only he alone is faithful. What he's saying is, any asset class, whether house, whether boat, whatever that you think that is for the long term, it cannot match the security of Jesus Christ for your life. Because Christ's security is not only for this life, but it is also for the life to come. You see, that is the problem. When people think that they are currently poor, whenever that they then start having their thinking, all that I want to be is to be as rich as can be, so that I don't no longer know what poverty is. There's nothing wrong about hard work, but do not try and seek security from the money that you are making. Because if these people, they are told to instruct those that they are rich, the idea is, if you are thinking that your money or your assets will give you security, this is nothing else but spiritual pride. And God hates pride. When you are seeking security in your things, it is nothing else but a rejection of being humble before Jesus Christ, who is the provider and the enabler for you to be able to acquire the things that you have. Because Christ is the only one who says then, when we have these things, we are to be generous. We are to be content. And not only content, but we are also to be thankful for them. Look, observe again. What we are to have also in terms of thinking, long-term thinking about asset classes, we are to be those whose desires and motives for wealth accumulation needs not to be elevated. Whatever our desire is for money or wealth, it still has to be evaluated. This is what Jesus says in Matthew 6. Look at 25 to 34. He says, make friends quickly with your opponent, and while you are at it on the way, so that your opponent may not hand you over. And he says, truly, truly, I say to you, you will not come out of there until you have prayed. And then says, you have heard it says, you shall not. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong text. I'm reading the wrong text. Yes, Matthew, I'm reading 25, and I'm thinking, no, I don't know that text. He says, for this reason, I say to you, Do not be worried about your life as to what you will eat or what you drink, nor for your body as to what you will put on. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, that they do not sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more worthy than they? And who of you, being worried, can add a single hour to his life? And why are you worried about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin. Yet I say to you that not even Solomon in all his glory clothed himself with all of these things. But if God clothes the fields, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not so much clothe you with? And it says, "O you." And look at verse 33, seek first the kingdom of God. He says then, when you're thinking of wealth accumulation and all these asset classes, evaluate what your motives are. Because we can seek to acquire these things because we don't want to trust God. Because we have an unbiblical or impure motive, and because we have not prioritized Christ in seeking these things. We are seeking these things out of covetousness. What about these asset classes? He says every time when we are to plan, we need to plan with the future in it. But we need to know that even as we plan, heaven still determines the outcomes. Because if heaven determines the outcomes, even in the accumulation of the asset classes in long-term finances, know that heaven still has a sway even on your finances. What I'm saying is, don't use what God says you ought to give to go and acquire assets. What is a Christian? The Christian is the one who does the will of God. So if God determines for you to take that amount of money and resources and to use it to give for his kingdom, don't use it for anything else. So I'm saying, even as you are trying to look into the future investments, prayerfully seek the will of the Lord for you. But once you know and he has told you, please follow it. According to 1 Timothy 16 and 18 and 19 and 1 John 3:17, we are saying every rand and cent to be invested must pass the divine disposal test. Because Christ is the one who still demands what our wealth should do. We are to prioritize his will over everything for his kingdom usage. In terms of this, I like how Keith Lee says the third, in terms of if you are to thinking long term, avoid high risk, get rich quick scheme. And I remember in the past, and hopefully in the future shall not happen, the pyramid schemes flow a lot. They are loved in the church. And especially when they are driven by the pastor. Because all that you have to do is come to the church, capture the pastor, and then the pastor will stand in front and he will make a bit of money, and then all the people will follow where the pastor has made the money. And please don't dare contradict the pastor. I remember there's a cousin of mine drove all the way from Newcastle, came to Spreadview. Was it the guy called Spusis or something? Yeah. I remember my mom and others lost a bit of money because of the get rich quick schemes. But I guess, aeroplane, quickly rush up. That's a get rich quick scheme. That's not how you do long-term planning. We said again, prioritize God because he used to be your number one investment. What about spending? The Bible says we must learn to be content. We must learn contentment. We have to be content with what God has granted to us. Philippians 4:11 to 13, 1 Timothy 6:6, Hebrews 13:5. We are not to be slaves to materialism. Materialism is getting as many things as you can because you're thinking that's what will make you. Materialism is having the biggest one and the greatest one, biggest house, biggest car, biggest everything else, best clothes. I remember the man said, "Udli kotini." Right. But we didn't know that the man had serious issues. So he was trying to bring his issues through ikotin. Because he didn't have what the true contentment that comes through Christ. Because you cannot take out from what is on the inside and put clothes on it. You cannot cover what is empty on the inside without Christ through clothes. Doesn't it amaze you that after they've done all these scores, these were the CITs, what do they do with the money? Buy cars and clothes. I remember the other one guy, when he died, is it last year or year before last? Was it 2022? This guy from Pretoria. 2022, I can't remember, was it 2023? And if you were coming, you were told, don't come wearing any clothes that are not 2023. But that's what we also do in the church. And sometimes we don't come to church because we think that the clothing that we have is not sufficient for us to come to church. We've put up something that is not of value. Because, oh, I have such and such a trouser, so I can't come to church. If we are free from this, that it means we are free to follow Christ. We are free to follow his objectives. But true contentment comes from our knowledge of who Christ is, because we cast our cares upon Jesus Christ and God. Because when we do so, it is failure to trust God. Because when we are seeking material things, we are thinking God will withhold these things. What Christ says, he speaks from the lesser to the greater. If he's able to give food to the birds, and if he's able to give clothing, the type of clothing that when he looks at the flowers says, not even Solomon, who was the richest man with all of his pomp and splendor, he says you can't compare him even to the flowers. Because you look at the kaleidoscope of the colors and the beauty of the flowers. There's beauty in that. And by the way, beauty comes from God. That's why he's the only one who can determine what true beauty is. That's why beauty cannot be skimpily clad. Can we say that, Pastor Loan? We don't show us your beauty by dressing skimpy clothing. The shortest. Or the one that does not leave much to the imagination when we look at you. Yeah. Can I say that there's this man? Oh, I don't think I'll even go. There's this man who went to the thingy with the wife, and she wore what? Nothing. But it also comes the same way to the church. But I'm not there for that. Also, what you need to know, we need to be guarding against temptation, Bazalwan, and accumulation. We cannot be taking our messages from the world. Because the world is forever giving us messages about what is the current and the trending. That's why we said they are social influencers and they make the most money. If they've got 10 million followers, they make the most money and we just follow them and we get nothing. We've got friends of ours where one of their daughters is an influencer. Social influencer. You follow that woman, you'll be in trouble. She flies all over, dresses in this way, gets sent clothes. Why do they send clothes? So that you can look at them and you buy them, and she gets them for free. That's why they are Remember, we spoke about this. That's why we've got the box in the room. Because the box in the room is nothing else but advertising. That's the television. Yeah, it gives us lots of things, but the more popular the program, the higher the revenues it gathers. Because there's many eyeballs on it. And because there's many eyeballs on it, they are willing to pay a lot of money on it. And you know who are the best spenders of money? This group sitting in front. Because kids are the ones who are the influencers in the home. They watch television. Oh, I saw this. Can you buy this? Can you buy that? Oh, why? Because television told you. All that we are saying is people get these things so that they can do nothing else but be impressionists. We're not saying don't dress well, but know why you are dressing well. And that's why I think we spoke about it. Isn't it amazing that when it comes to dress code, the people who are, when it comes to the church, who are the people who are asked to have proper dress code? The women. But because that's just how you were made, right? So don't look at this box in there because it's just a tool for enticement to spend. Because what the boss is, it is to push inside of you or unearth or detect undetected desires in you. You didn't have a need for this car until you see it on the box. Right? Oh, and besides, when he talks about this, I remember my brother saying this. He always says, you see, or my sister always says, because she says she works in retail, she says she loves selling to men. Says men, we buy on the spot. And when men buy on the spot, we buy a lot. You come into the shop, you only wanted to buy a pack of socks. Says, what about a belt? What about some trousers, to match your socks? What about a shirt to buy, And then suddenly you came wanting to spend $100, you come out having spent $800. And then when men, because we don't spend a lot, I'm not saying that not women, men who are fashion conscious, but most men, when they spend money, they spend it on high value items. They've left home and they come back, they've bought a brand new television. But why did you buy a television? No, man, I wanted one. But you've never spoken about it. Or why they buy cars? Because of a temptation. And how then we evaluate purchases? You need to run. Maybe I will not even complete this. According to the biblical principle, Keith is helpful. He says, can we pay cash or will the purchase put us in debt? If whatever that you're going to buy, will it be enough that you pay the cash? Or secondly, do you have peace about it? And we don't have any doubt about it. This is Romans 14:23 and Colossians 3:15. We need to be careful because we tend to rationalize. That's what I wanted to tell my brother. He says most men, we spend money and then we then come back to rationalize the expense. Why I needed it after the fact. Do we really need what we are needing, or is it a matter of greed? Will it be profitable for the family? Will it bring spiritual growth? Will it bring health? Will it bring health to the ministry? Will it increase the reputation of Christ? Or will it hinder our love for Christ? 1 Timothy 3:4. In terms of our spending, is it for our lifestyle or is our lifestyle currently adequate? Because sometimes people make purchases out of a lifestyle. Remember I spoke about the corner office syndrome. Because you stay in a certain area, therefore that area determines what type of car you need to buy. Because you stay in a certain area, your children need to go to certain schools. Because you stay in a certain area, you need to dress in a certain way. Because you stay in a certain area, you need to eat in certain restaurants. That's the corner office syndrome. In terms of our spending, do we need to reduce our spending? Are we still currently comfortable where we are? Because if you are comfortable, you don't really need to spend that much. That's what Matthew 6:33 says. Know where your priorities are to be. What about credit? God favors those who save, investing. Deuteronomy 15:56. Because when you are saving or lending, you become a wise steward. You find freedom. I remember lenders and I spoke to those who are in my house to say, all of us need to have credit. Because not very many of us will be able to buy a house cash. And not many of us will have parents who will buy us houses when we get married. So it means most of us, we need to go save. That means that's why you need a good credit score. A good credit score means nothing else but your name. But you know how you build a good credit score? Then you can afford clothing. You go to whatever shop that offers clothing. You buy a dress that can be paid. You can pay cash for it. You say, I'll pay it over 6 months. And then you come every month to come pay. Not dresses. One dress. You come and pay every month because your credit score says you are somebody who's able, once you are given credit, you pay your debts. That's how you build a credit score. You don't have to go buy a brand new car to build a credit score. Because credit must be used wisely. Because once your name is bad, you can't even afford to buy a car, you even have a house. And that's why you need to make sure you learn these things whilst you're still young. And that's why even before you get married, make sure that the one you're getting married to, you know that their credit score is. Because sometimes you get married when people then you suddenly want to go buy stuff, they say, no, your husband or your wife, he is a bad payer. I'm saying as a Christian, Bazawan, please make sure that you pay your debts. Scripture is not against borrowing, but it just says if you borrow, you know that you'll be a slave to the lender. Well, in terms of some high value items, I'm just saying is if you need a fridge, you can be able to save for a fridge. You don't have to go buy it on credit. I always tell to people, it's amazing that you know how to go pay for a fridge for 6 months, but you're unable to save for 6 months to go and buy it cash. No, you don't understand. No. Be disciplined, save, and go get the fish for cash. Or even cars, you don't always have to buy the nicest and the biggest and the flashiest. That tells us that you've arrived. What about borrowing? Keep it to a minimum, Bazalwan. Because that's what wise stewardship is. I think I told you, there's a friend of mine, we used to go to school together, at varsity together. The mother used to work for the bank. And she said she loved those who've got degrees. She says, those people are financially illiterate. Because all that they have, they bring their diploma or their degree certificate and will give them any and everything. And because the money agree, it's like, yeah. Do you want a credit card? Yes. It's the same as when you go buy a car. For those who don't buy cars, who go and buy a car. You don't go in there and tell them how much you want to spend. They will maximize it. But let's go to Mount borrowing. Because credit is risky as alone. So that's why we must not be impulsive buyers. Do not use your ability, your affordability to deal with your boredom and your loneliness. Because that's what people do. Out of loneliness, they go shopping. Though that they have their Lord with them. He said, he shall never leave you nor forsake you. Some people might use credit as a substitute for trusting God. Or as Kitley says, because we are not willing to wait on him. We're not willing to wait. I need it and I need it now. And once we are in credit, we can't afford to give. Oh, the Lord must understand. I need a house. But yeah, you could have went for another very, but you went for the highest ones that must tell us what you are making. And thus we can't afford to give in church. We can't use credit to bring about dissatisfaction. Because here's the thing, Bazalana, I agree with Heath here. He says, the materialist is never content, but those who are godly learn contentment. I love television. I told you, you'll hear me. Have you seen all those people where they are just hoarders and buyers? You get into their house, oh yeah, she's mom is disagreeing with me. Right? All that they do, they just buy. They just buy. But because they're not dealing with what's on the inside. The others will deal. Let's deal with that because I want to close this. I don't want to come back this week. Through Weinberg, he says you need to know what the financial profile is. You all need a financial profile. Because for us to have a financial profile, it means we need to know how to make a budget. So every month you need to know what your assets are. What is your salary? What is your income per month? And any other money that you are bringing in. Those are your assets. Every month you need to know how much you have, where all the money is coming from. Those are your assets. And then there are liabilities. You need to deal with that. If you've got skoloto, start first with the long-term ones. Start. What are your total outstanding debts? Look what Wayne Mack said. Look at number 1. Regular monthly obligation, number 1. How much are you giving to your church and to the ministries? Because that's the priority. Number 2, are you paying your taxes? Number 3, what are the food and the household items? Therefore, water and electricity. What is the cell phone or the data that you need to pay? How much insurance? Any debt payments? Education? What are the allowances? How are you helping others? Build emergencies. How much are you paying? What then is this total that you have as your debts or your obligations? I think the power is gone. And then once you know what the difference is, then you know how much you have. If your liabilities are greater than your assets, you are in debt. If what you are paying out is more than what you are bringing in, you are in debt. Please don't go to Mashonisa. And if you know that your liabilities are greater, please work on reducing them. Here's a plan. How do you do? You start off with the lowest debt first. If every month there's something that you are paying for 20 rand, make sure you squash that one first. And with that extra 20 rand, you go to the next one that was $100. Now instead of paying $100, you're paying $120. After you're finished, you take the $120, you go to the next that where you're paying $500. Now you're no longer paying $500, you are paying 620 rand. And therefore you move from the 620, you go to the one where you're paying 1,200. Now it's 1,200 plus the 620. That's how you get out of debt. Start off with the smallest first. That's how you get out of debt. And once you get out of debt, don't go back to it. I close by looking at what Max says in terms of this. He says all of us have got these 11 things that you need to be looking at, Bazalan. 1, you must decide what your living standard is. You must make a choice. You choose what the kind of living standard you have. 2, look at your credit and buying church accounts. You are in charge of those. 3, look at what you're spending for recreation, gifts, and vacations are. You need to take care of those. 4, you are in charge of your giving to the church. As parents, we need to be looking into the future education of our children. You are in charge of that. You need to look into the insurance plans. We get a lot of insurance, trying to mitigate that we don't give. 7, we must make a will. Make a will. Most South Africans die interstate without a will. You are in charge of your saving and investment. 9, you are in charge of paying your bills on time. We feel and know lots of people with lots of stories about why they don't want to pay. And it's sad when you're a Christian, because it's now your name. Have a way of a good booking system. And lastly, have a plan for acquiring big items. How are you going to acquire that car? How are you going to acquire that house? How are you going to acquire furniture? Have a plan for it. That's your duty. I'm saying as I close, Bazalan, we have studied the biblical idea about how to handle our finances, possessions, and material things. We cannot run away from God because He's the possessor of all things, I'm saying. And all that we are to be wise stewards. We know that God will hold us accountable for how we handled His possessions. And I urge you, as I say, like Paul says, it is incumbent of us to be faithful. As stewards, I close by saying we are to be savvy in how we give, in how we spend, in how we invest, because this is what God has entrusted into our hands. Next week we'll look into what the Bible says how to give financially as an example. We thank you, our Father, this morning. We bless you. It's in Christ's name. Amen.